The number one thing holding you back from moving abroad is not money, it's you not having a plan. And this is what we're going to talk about in this video. There's so much noise right there right now on the internet discussing and encouraging people to move abroad, particularly from the United States to Europe, Latin America, and Asia, because many of these countries offer a quality of life that is unattainable without paying a premium in the United States. And so the basic necessities Americans are lacking when it comes to affordable food, affordable healthy food, affordable health care, quality of life, safety, all of these things are really challenging in the United States. And most Americans at this point are in fight or flight. And so there has been an exodus to move abroad because many of these countries offer this to citizens, visitors, temporary residents without requiring these people to pay a premium like it is in the United States. If you want safety, you have to live in certain neighborhoods, or that's not even a guarantee that you feel safe. Or you want good education, you have to pay a premium for that. And so many Americans are realizing that in order to attain these basic things to have a healthy quality of life, they have to move abroad. However, without a plan, you're bound to fail. That's the reality about moving abroad that no one's going to tell you. You need a plan in place. And I'm not from the school of thought that you just pick up your whole life and you're in fight or flight and you pick up and move to another country. No, that is not the framework from where I work. As an attorney, I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of clients, and I am an advocate for planning each step. Of course, you cannot plan out every aspect of any situation, but even the worst plan is better than no plan. And that's why you see so many Americans moving to certain countries and feeling despondent when they realize they have to return to the United States. Is that lack of planning? Perhaps. I've seen so many scenarios where the person just picked up their whole life. They were going through a loss, a breakup, grief, and they decided they were done with the United States and they picked up and moved abroad. That can work for some people. That does not work for me. If you've been following my journey, you know this has been several years in the making, where even initially when I felt the desire to move abroad, I didn't know where I would land. And so I was scouting. I was going to different countries and getting a feel for the countries. I didn't even know where I would end up. I at first thought it would be Costa Rica. I visited Costa Rica, I believe in 2018, fell in love with it. And I thought I would be transitioning to making Costa Rica my home. However, COVID happened and then there was a shift. COVID shifted everything for the globe. And then I visited Portugal and I said, okay, Portugal sounds and looks good and feels good. Perhaps Portugal will be my home. And as you know, fast forward, you saw it was Colombia and Italy, where I eventually bought a home in Italy and then opened up a business in Colombia. So as you can see, there was a lot of turns. It wasn't a straight route, but I allowed myself and I was able to make these turns without being in fight or flight, but because I was not picking up and doing anything dramatic with my life. I was still working. I still had my law practice, which gave me safety and security while I explored these other options. I did not burn down my whole life for the sake of moving abroad. And that's what we're going to discuss in this video. Do not burn down your whole life in order to move abroad. You do need a plan. Many Americans, because of the freedom and the resources and the girth and the robustness of the United States, many Americans think that they could pick up and move to any country without any requirements because the US passport is so strong and the American reputation, the American banking system props up not only the country, but the Americans to have privilege outside of the US, perhaps more privilege outside of the US than they actually have in the US. And so many Americans think that they could just relocate without having to deal with any residency requirements or visa requirements. Unbeknownst to them, they go on vacation to a place and they say, I like it here and I want to stay here indefinitely. However, that's a recipe for disaster because 9 times out of 10 American passport holders, you are required to have some sort of residency longer than 90 days. You have to go through some sort of visa process or residency in order to remain in that country longer than the 90-day increments. So anyone going on vacation thinking they could stay indefinitely is in violation of immigration policies of that country. So that's rule number one. You have to know that you cannot pick up with your US passport and relocate just based on hope and dreams. Number two, another major concern that Americans have to plan for before they move abroad is health insurance. In the United States, health insurance is tied to employment. However, what is it like abroad? Well, fortunately, America is perhaps the only country that has health coverage tied to employment and has this profit-driven model rather than a care-driven model. So 9 times out of 10, wherever you relocate, there is some sort of national or socialized medicine that you can partake in. And so it may be relatively possible for you to enroll in that national program. However, back to rule number one, you need a residency or permission to be in that country to partake in that health insurance, that national health insurance. So as you can see, these two things are really tied together. So you don't want to pick up and move to a place just because they have good health insurance, because A, you need permission to be there in order to partake and enjoy the benefits of that health insurance. You want to make sure you iron that out before you pick up and move to another country. Another thing to consider is financial and banking systems. If you move to another country and you're there for longer than 183 days, that country may start to tax you as a resident. And so you want to make sure that you're compliant regarding the tax requirements in that country, as well as the tax requirements in the United States. Another layer of that is if you open up a bank account in that country, there are certain reporting requirements as a US citizen that you have to let the IRS or the Department of Treasury know that you are opening up a bank account and how much money you have in that bank account. So there are certain reporting requirements on the foreign country side as well as on the US side. So you want to make sure you're compliant regarding that. Failure to comply with banking systems leads to significant and severe penalties, including tens of thousands of dollars that you may owe the IRS, not even if you owe in taxes, but failure to report. So even if you don't owe, the IRS will still penalize you because of the failure to report. Number two, that lets you know, well, I'm going to table that. That's another discussion. But it speaks to the girth and the power of the US banking system and the government, that they have influence on banking systems in other countries, requiring those countries' banks to report back to the US for any foreign transactions dealing with US citizens. We dealt with the visa, we dealt with financial, tax compliance, healthcare. Another thing in terms of, if we think about healthcare again, people who have pre-existing conditions, you will have to have a temporary international health insurance. How do I say this? Another concern is that if you have a pre-existing conditions, unfortunately, many Americans leaving the US have developed health conditions for a variety of reasons. The stress, the food, all sorts of things impact the American's health. And so the likelihood that you're leaving the US with a health condition is probably high. However, you're required to have international health insurance. And there's a number of providers on the internet. There's Cigna, Alliance, Safety Wing. There's a few that provide you with international health insurance. However, if you have a pre-existing condition, the likelihood of that international health insurance carrier covering you is slim to none. But there are ways to work around that. And I'm going to discuss it later on in this video. So you want to plan in the event your pre-existing condition is not covered for that health coverage and you have a relapse. What are your fail-safe systems in the event that you have a health care scare and your health insurance does not cover it? Do you have extra medication? Is there a specialist in that country? Are you in a country where these specialists, it's easy to get an appointment? So all of those things you want to plan for. Another thing to consider is owning a business. Many people move abroad, and because labor is relatively less expensive than it is in the US, they're excited about the idea of opening a foreign business. But guess what? The IRS wants to know about it. Another thing to consider regarding your big plan, because remember, this is about the lack of planning that Americans partake in when they move abroad, which is the number one reason why many end up failing, is that re-entry obligations. You still have to maintain a connection with the United States and the state in which was your previous residence. That's especially if you have Medicare or Medicaid. They also require reporting requirements, especially if you're out of the country for more than 30 days. Medicaid may suspend your coverage. In terms of Medicare, if you cancel your premiums, I discussed this in previous videos, the difference between Medicare Part A and Part B, Part C and D. If you cancel B, you may face a penalty when you return to the United States. So all of this falls under the gamut of planning. It's not just simply a matter of picking up and moving to a country, getting a lease, and just enjoying the life. There are many intricacies, and which I want to introduce you to. I do have a Move Abroad course called Legally Abroad, where we iron out all of these things that you need to consider before you move abroad. This is to give you clarity and confidence. And from my perspective as an attorney, whenever I meet with a client, I comb through the ins and outs of their issues so that they can be protected, avoid liability. And we try to imagine every possible scenario. And of course, you can't imagine every possible scenario, but we do as much forensics as we possibly can so that a client is protected. And that's what I ironed out in the Legally Abroad course. We go through visa requirements and residency requirements. We discuss which countries you want to think about moving abroad and which ones should be off the table because perhaps there's no pathway to residency or there's no pathway to you getting a visa, or it could be relatively difficult. We also find the different ways of getting a visa, which often is missed out in a lot of moving abroad course. You may not be ready to retire, and you still want to work. And you may have a specialized education, in which case that country is inviting many people who have a scientific background, who have worked in healthcare or elder care, or work with manufacturing. Many countries are inviting people with these special skills and providing visa pathways and residency pathways, making it easier to bridge that American to move to that country. In the course, we discussed the different avenues that Canada is taking, Australia is undergoing, New Zealand is taking, as well as countries in the EU, to invite skilled Americans to relocate there based on this skilled work based on this skilled background and expertise. And there's a job as well as a visa and residency lined up all in one. So we discuss it all in the course. We also discuss healthcare, which countries have a nationalized healthcare system that you can enroll in relatively easy and that's low cost. We deal with, if you have a pre-existing condition, how to receive international health insurance, as well as bridge the gap if you have a pre-existing condition. Because as I mentioned earlier, most international health insurance do not cover your pre-existing conditions. So we develop a plan as a fail-safe in the event you relapse, that you can still seek healthcare without it bankrupting you. Next, we discuss the compliance part, how to be compliant regarding the tax rules of that country as well as in the United States. There are reporting requirements that the IRS requires you to report to the IRS if you conduct foreign transactions, if you have bank accounts, if you have dividend stocks in any other foreign banking system outside of the US. So we go through what are your reporting requirements regarding that. We also deal with how to handle international assets, especially as it deals to real estate, how to create an international estate plan, which I'm most excited about, especially because I have property in Italy. So we work through how to develop a plan that's consistent in the US as well in the country that you're moving abroad to, because many people move abroad and they forget to deal with their foreign assets, especially if they have acquired international real estate. Your US will, your US trust has no bearing in that new country. So we develop plans to make sure that your assets are protected in the foreign country and that your heirs are able to inherit it rather smoothly, as well as owning a business abroad. What are your requirements if you want to open up a new business abroad? What are you required to do? What do you have to report to the IRS? What are your requirements in that country as well? So as you can see, this course is so robust and I iron out all the things that you need to be thinking about if you want to move abroad. And it's a plan in place to give you clarity if you want to move abroad, but you have no idea where to start with a plan. And you may be asking, like, well, so many people on the internet move abroad without hiring an attorney, without doing a course. Why should I pay for this course? That's absolutely true. You do not need a course to help you move abroad. This is not for someone who wants to figure this out as they go along. This is for someone who knows they could figure it out, but wants the guidance of a professional, of an attorney to guide them. We need support sometimes. This is a major life decision, and there's nothing to be frowned upon about the idea of reaching out to an attorney who not only has the legal knowledge, the tax knowledge, but also the implications, because I've done it myself personally. So you get firsthand experience of what I went through. Even with the knowledge that I have, I've had my setbacks. So you get the framework of things that I would have done differently, because I'm a human too. I have the desires just like any other human. So even with my legal education, I was bound to experience setbacks. Even with going through forensics, ironing out everything, having the best laid plan that I could possibly develop for myself to allow me to have a safe landing, I had my setbacks. And so you get to experience the things that I had to go through. And that type of access, for me, I think it's so valuable. If I could sit alongside an attorney and pick their brain and say, oh, what would you have done differently and why did this happen? I think it's extremely insightful and valuable. So if that's valuable to you, I'm going to put the link in the description box for you to sign up. There is a pre-launch price. I don't know how long it's going to be that price. So if you want to benefit from the discount, then it would behoove you to begin thinking about signing up for Legally Abroad. What else do we discuss? And When you sign up for the course, it's 1 year access. Many people may be wondering why 1 year access. The reason why I limit it for 1 year access because the laws and the visa requirements for each country may change. And so the information may be moot. If you have purchased the course, I will continue to do updates. So the course material is a curriculum, but I will continue to add to it as new developments or new things may come up in the international community that I think will be important to you. And there will also be live sessions where you get to be one-on-one with me as an attorney, ask me questions, go over your plan, even provide some counseling in terms of mindset shift if you are on the fence about moving abroad and perhaps you need to convince your husband or your spouse that it's the right decision for you. I can also provide that. So as you can see, this is a really hands-on experience where you get to meet with an attorney, iron out your move abroad plan so that you can be successful. And also the idea of what's your plan B? I don't think it's a bad idea if your plan B is to return to the United States. I see so many people despondent about returning to the United States where things did not work out. Be fortunate that you could return to a country like the United States that receives you and find employment and find housing in order to regroup and move abroad again. I don't think that's a failure. You've learned, you've had experience moving abroad, you know that you could do it again. You've had experience moving abroad. You've been successful because you did it. Even if it lasted 9 months, even if it lasted a year, you absolutely did do it. And so you can build upon that experience for your next journey and learn from that and avoid certain pitfalls because you moved abroad. So there's no failure in this journey. The What else do I want to mention? What's also included in the course is that there's checklists, things that you need as a guide as you move towards the steps. Once you decide, narrow down the countries that you want to focus on. We want to go through the visa requirements, the healthcare requirements in that country, as well as your tax strategy, letting you know what your requirements are, your social security requirements, your Medicare requirements, you're receiving social security and Medicare, real estate abroad, as we discussed, there's a specific module with dealing with inheritance and making sure your heirs inherit with relative ease. So while this is live, if anyone comes in, you can ask me questions about the course. So, and then I will provide the email if you have additional questions. If you want to ask more about the course, I will create an outline so you know exactly what is involved in the course. So ultimately, this course is to give you peace of mind regarding moving abroad. Rather than duct taping information from the internet, you get to experience a plan in place and know the steps that you need to be thinking about on your move abroad journey. So with that being said, the link will be in the description box. Again, there is a launch price that will not be there. I'm not sure exactly how long I'm going to keep that launch price. I'm still figuring some things out on this end. But in the course, you do get access to speak with me one-on-one or with family members. It's really about building a community so that you feel supported, that you feel that you can ask your questions and they're answered clearly. You have options in terms of plan A, plan B, plan C. So let me know your questions regarding moving abroad. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and I'm more than happy to answer your questions regarding moving abroad, whether it's dealing with healthcare, if you have a pre-existing condition, how to handle that pre-existing condition, or you're dealing with visa applications, or if you're applying with another family member, those particular things, feel free to message me. And I will see you next time.